Non kan, så jag inte ser. For now. He's coming. Okay.
Folks, we're going to drag our heels just a little bit because the main document author isn't in the room yet, and we have slack on the agenda, so we'll just give him a couple of minutes to get here.
I've never pressed one. He's coming. All right, shall we?
Good morning. This is L2SM. I hope we're not on a trajectory through L1SM to L0SM and beyond. Yeah. So this is our first meeting of this working group, and
My name is Qin Wu.
that's us. So just because it's a first meeting doesn't mean the IPR stuff doesn't apply. Everything you do and say may be taken down and used in evidence against you. Be aware, disclose IPR if you know it and you're participating. Okay, we have a charter. On the charter page, we have a mailing list. The mailing list has so far not been very active, but then also it's not very old, so maybe that's okay. But do discuss stuff, do bring up your ideas, your concerns on the list. It's the best way to achieve work. Minutes for this meeting are going straight into Etherpad. If you would like to help crowdsource those minutes, then your chairs will love you so much, they might even say thank you. It's really helpful, especially if you're making comments. When you sit back down from making your comments, go check Etherpad to make sure what you said is recorded, otherwise it might get lost. Jabber. I've got the Jabber client open here. I don't think it's going to be a very busy Jabber room, but if anybody wants to say anything from a remote site, if they just type it in Jabber, I'll make sure it's caught. Blue sheets are going round, please sign them. When you come to the microphone, please say who you are clearly enough that even somebody like me can work out who you are. So this is our agenda. I will quickly go through what the charter is and what it means, and Ching is going to do a refresher on what we're talking about when we say a customer service model. And then, well, in fact, Mahesh is going to come and impersonate Scott and talk a little bit about what's happening on related work in the MEF. And then we'll get into the substance of the draft that is on the table, and Giuseppe will present that, and then we can have a free-for-all or work out what the next steps are and how we'll go forward. Okay, so the charter. It's our objective to come up with just one Yang data model that describes L2 VPN services and is intended for the interface between a customer and a network operator, or maybe we should say service provider, or whatever, the person the customer talks to. And it allows automated control or configuration applications to request the service. So the high-level aim is to try to get multiple popular L2 VPN service types in there, effectively, unless there's a good reason to leave out one of them. And this is not an exclusive list. So if you have a favorite L2 VPN service that you offer or you consume, then we should look at being able to do it with this service model. We are instructed by our charter to coordinate with other folk. Within the IETF, the key places of coordination are BES and PALS, where the services are actually delivered, and obviously NetMod and NetConf, where the tools are made. Outside the IETF, we need to coordinate with anybody else who's working on L2 VPN data models, and the big obvious one is MEF. That's the one we've identified, and that's why Mahesh is on the agenda. If other forums or standards organizations come to light, we will also talk to them. It's inclusive rather than exclusive. Our motivation then to enable agile creation and delivery of services from a customer's point of view, and to facilitate the inclusion of new services, let customers understand the different offerings from different service providers, and let operators build advanced service offerings on a common base. So we would imagine that this service model might easily be augmented by different service providers as they go, as they add new different widgets and things. It's not a configuration model. Okay, so this is not configuring data elements, network elements, protocols. This is talking about the service. Some language that got used earlier in the week was it's an abstract service model, not a normalized service model, and definitely not a network configuration model. Thank you. In the architecture of use of this, there would be something, and it might be a human, it might be a piece of software that consumes this model and maps it through to how the network is operating and delivering the service. Along the way, it's helpful to the people who are writing those normalized or protocol-specific models to have something they can refer back to and say, well, given this abstract service model, this customer service model, could we deliver the right function? Do we have the right data fields in our models? Can we work out the mapping? So it's not our job to go and do that for them, but it's our job to provide them the material so that they could perform that. There's probably a lot of benefit to us in looking at what the L3 VPN service model did and following a similar design, because that's going to make it a lot easier for people to write code and understand what's going on. Okay, we have 2 milestones. The first milestone is the only real one. The first one is do the work. And the second one is stop working when you've done the work. So we're targeting October 2017. What L2SM taught us was that's achievable, but it might have a long tail. So with L2SM, we were well on target to our milestone, and then the last 10% took the same amount of time as the first 90%. But we should shoot for it. We have an initial document. The initial document has been worked on by 4 service providers. It's a stake in the ground. It's something for us to build on. They've been happily revising this as they go. It's the 03 revision now, and it's got a lot of, it's the result of a lot of work, but it's not cast in stone. Okay, we can change it. So what do we need? We need this work to be driven by operators. The reason we need it to be driven by operators is it's describing the operator's offering. It's not equipment vendors' business to describe what an operator is selling. But obviously the vendors should participate, because they need to be mapping this through to how they really deliver the services and how the data model will be used. They've got a lot of experience and knowledge about what an L2 VPN is. So you don't feel shy if you're a vendor, but be aware that this is the operator's game. I would desperately like the customers, the enterprises, also to be involved in this. However, if you go down the attendance list for this meeting and count the number of people here from classic enterprises, I found 8. So we'll keep trying for that. And if you've got customers who are enterprises who would like to play, please bring them along. What you need to do is review, comment, ask questions, and write text. So we are going to start with draft when, which is out there. We have to immediately answer the question, is it good enough for a starting point? It's clearly not perfect. If it was perfect, we'd have an IETF last call and move on. There is work to be done. We'll use the mailing list as our prime focus. We should run an issue tracker. During the work so far, the authors have been using GitHub for their issue tracker, and we can go on doing that, or we could move the issue tracker into the IETF data tracker. I don't care. If people have a preference, they should say so. My inclination with what is a fairly small working group and one where we don't have too many documents is to move forward using virtual interim meetings. So we can meet from time to time, discuss pieces of the document and move forward quite fast. And lastly, we really need to avoid reinventing things that already exist. So if there's material we can either incorporate or reference, we should be very serious about doing that. Life is too short to reinvent bike sheds. And my last slide, we received a liaison actually before the working group was created from MEF, looking forward to collaborating with the IETF on this, and that's a really positive thing. And that liaison, which you can find in the data tracker, has lots of pointers to MEF work that's in progress, and I know Mahesh will also talk about that. The liaison also includes login information, so people who are not members of MEF can actually get at that data, and that's a really nice thing for MEF to have done for us. We're used to the IETF where everybody can get at anything. MEF's a member organization, so it's normally a lot tighter. With this login information, we can all get and see what MEF is doing and working on. Mahesh is here, Scott is also here, I think, yeah. And the two of them can tell us pretty much anything we want to know about MEF. So talk to them if you have issues. Their working group chairs are going to write a response to this liaison, partly coming out of what we hear in this meeting, and run that past the AD and the mailing list to get sent out fairly soon. All right, that's me. Any questions so far? Yeah.
Yes, hi, Dan Bogdanovic, vendor. So I'm curious, from what I understood, and I wasn't here from the beginning, so I apologize. You're here mainly focusing L2VPN as a metro technology, correct? Or you're also thinking about the use cases inside data centers as well as, possible within the enterprise campus?
So I would say any use of L2VPN where that L2VPN is being sold by an operator to a user.
So what about when they are using it by themselves internally? That's the question.
Oh, so where the customer is the provider, then yeah, I see that the use case more and more. So I would like to. Well, can you bring your customers into this discussion? That would be, and if you may have to channel them, or you may have to get them to talk to the chairs if they're shy. But it would be really fun to have their opinion on that.
Lucy Yang from Huawei. Can you go back to slide 5, which is the chatter review? Yeah, here use the first major bullet, second sub bullet. Using the word between the customer and the network operator. So typically, customer is talk to a service provider, not necessarily a network operator who are operating the network. So yeah.
We're going to, I think actually Mahesh is going to bring up some entertaining terminology issues. What is a network operator? What is a carrier? What is a service provider? Etc. We need to get our language clear, but I don't think we should get hung up on it. Okay, there are two different organizations involved. The person that uses the service and the person that sells the service. Those are, I think, the two organizations we're talking about for this model.
For this model, cover both, or for this, which one? This model?
This model is the L2 VPN service model.
Yeah, but you're saying that there's two parts. One is the who offer the service. One is
right. There's for any data model there is a consumer and a speaker. Yeah, and so we are on the interface between two people. Those people are the customer and the vendor, the vendor of the service, not the vendor of the hardware. Yeah. Hey.
Anyway, yeah.
As soon as we start to talk about terminology of service providers, we can also talk about terminology of vendors. We can confuse ourselves as much as we want.
I know, because the service provider here, the structure is not that simple. Not just have the single role. Say I offer the service, I also operate the service. Typically, the service provider, the structure organization involve several group. That's also when we do this automated system, we have several components. So that's why if we're, I feel the wording sometimes misleading could be cause word, that also cause misleading or misinterpret.
So
But I don't want to argue
suggest better wording.
No, I'm not suggesting a better word. No, I just want to point out. The second comment is the third major bullet, the base model to cover multiple popular layer 2 VPN type. So is this saying that a base model can be implemented by all this different the technology, or this customer need to know I'm ordering the VPW service, or I'm ordering VPLS service, or I'm ordering?
I think mainly the first of those, that is to say, what we want is to come up with an abstract service definition that is capable of being realized in all these different ways. And if one of these ways of realizing the service demands additional information from the customer, then that's got to be in the model. But it's not the case that the customer has to understand, oh, this service is being delivered by LDP.
Right. So that's why I feel like a wording seems like saying that you have to be agnostic which type of implementation you're ordered. But I feel like, yeah, customer order layer 2 VPN services, but you can be implemented by that. Particular implementation requires some additional, information. That's my understanding. But that's why the wording, I didn't.
Hi, Reza Roku from Nokia. I have two questions here. One is, what about the layer 2 services, optical layer 2 services, which are mainly based on MPLS-TP? I want to make sure that this model covers that one as well.
So certainly this is not an exclusive list, okay? This is a list of things we thought, as we were writing the charter, we must at least include these. If there are other things as well.
But I think this one is one of the, the requirement for layer 2 services, which are based on MPLS-TP. It's one asked from the different customers, and I think it should.
Right, I'm going to try that again. This is a list of things that at least we must include. Okay. It does not prohibit us including other things that people want to include.
Okay, and at least the way that I understand it, this bullet, the third one basically is a reflection of any service which is a pseudo-wire and non-pseudo-wire. For example, eVPN is non-pseudo-wire service. Other services, VLR or VPLS, are pseudo-wire based. So this is the aim, to cover both at the same time.
Right. And yeah, I generally hope that the customer can't tell the difference.
Okay, I have some question maybe later on.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Iftikhar and Finera, just a basic question about the charter. So I see that point-to-point services is covered, multi-point services covered, but also there's a third kind of point-to-multiple, like what called the E-tree service in the MEF terminology. And also, I think, so even eVPN, for example, they are in the IETF, they are extending that to cover that service type. Also in the older version, traditional, I think there was some implementation. So I was just wondering, was it just intentionally left it out, or did that third type? Because we're mentioning point-to-point and multi-point, but not because they're different, right? That's implementation or realization dependent.
Yeah, so I don't think anything is intentionally left out with the intent of excluding, okay? So anything people really want to do is in. I think, if you took the multicast eVPN as an example, I'm pretty sure nobody's selling that service today, on account of we haven't finished writing the spec for how you deliver it. But that doesn't mean we can't be forward-looking. So again, if people want stuff included and it makes a difference, okay? I mean, a lot of this is not actually going to make a difference to what the customer is talking about as an abstract service. But if stuff needs to be included where the customer does see it, then as far as I understand our charter, we're completely open to including that.
I think to the customer that would be definitely visible because that there's going to be a huge difference between a multi-point service versus multi-point service. So I think that aspect would be definitely visible to the ultimate customer.
Since from the clarify that, I think an E-trade service is different from what you call the multicast. The E-trade, it is a point-to-multipoint. They have a special communication, the rules between those the root and the leaves. But you can do the unicast over the E-trade. So E-trade is E-trade. E-trade is not the multicast transport. You can carry for the multicast traffic. I also agree. I think we should include the E-trade. That's another.
We done on charter? No. Oh, too late. Sit down.
So I know we are talking about the charter and specific services, and I was going to wait till sorry, my name is Himanshu from Siena. I was going to wait till the draft is presented. But one thing I want to point out before that is when I was going through that draft, I found a lot of information that was very much device specific. To give you an example, the up map, down map, the layer 2 control protocol, packet propagation, and a lot of other stuff, right? So what I want to say is when people go through that presentation, to keep that in mind and note that what are, is it really a service model specific, or this is specific to device?
Yeah. So the second time I've had this conversation in the last 35 minutes. I think there are two things to catch on to. The first is that it's work in progress. It's a first stab at it.
Sure.
It's by no means at working group last call stage, and we just need to get it right. The second thing to remember is that there are elements like the CE to PE connectivity that does need to be quite tightly specified, because the customer equipment is talking to the service provider equipment, and you've got to know what it's talking.
Right. Now, there is another thing over there too. In here, this particular model talks about CE as a service provider's equipment and a CE as a customer's equipment. And they talk about Uni-C and Uni-N and all that stuff. So there is, anyway, those are, I just want to have everybody pay attention while we are presenting this thing, is to make sure that, what is device specific here, because there's too much details there that I found those were device specific rather than service specific.
Cool.
So
Okay.
just let's keep that on mind. That's all.
Dan Bogdanovic. So Benoit, Karl Moberg, and I, we proposed a classification of the modules, and we wanted to make a difference between a device module and a service module. So the idea is that in the working groups like BESS and PALS, they are creating device-specific modules that we can use as a baseline for the service module in this working group. And then we have to be careful when we are specifying, because we are specifying the technical service model, that it can map into their business service model. We cannot really discuss the business service model in this group. We should really focus on the technical service model where the operator can then come back and say, this can map into our business model or cannot map into our business model. So then essentially we are coming from both sides together and saying, here's from a technical perspective, they're saying this is from a business perspective.
So I think that is actually a perfect cue into Jing's next set of slides.
I may be a little disagree with what Dean just said. I think the charter cover saying this is the model between the customer and the network operator. then you're assuming that can cover the generic layer 2 VPN services. So if you do that, you are not requiring customer to understand what is your device looks like, right? That's you want the mainly the service model is the attribute agreed between the customer and the service offer.
They don't have to understand, the underlying. They can just decide which, based on the devices, etc. They can decide which device technology they want to use from the supported service models. Because I can see that you give them an offer based on their devices, what is supported, that they can use one of the listed technologies, and then they can make the decision. For example, do I want to use just point-to-point or point-to-multipoint? It's the customer decision which one they want to choose based on the support of the devices. And if, of course, the service provider offers that service.
Okay, so basically you're saying this service model exposes what the device can offer to the customer, then let customers. That's we call.
So let's take this next set of slides because that's addressing some of that issue. And just before Tim talks, can I quickly poll the room? Who in the room considers themselves to be a hardware vendor? Okay, who considers themselves to be a software vendor? And who considers themselves to be a network operator, stroke service provider, stroke God? Right, so welcome to the three of you, I think, two of whom are already document authors, and the third of whom is going to find themselves pounced on later. Okay, thank you for that. Ching. No, do whatever you like. Go under the table.
Okay. So good morning, everyone. Actually, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Maybe I use that one.
Oh, I'll do it.
Okay. Can you hear me? Oh, okay, okay. I think we already draw the line between the service model and the device model based on the Young model classification draft. For this, actually, I want to actually set a criteria for the customer service model. So that's the motivation we do this. Next. So what I really like to do is to clarify what is the customer service model, what is not should not be included in the customer service model. So we have confusion how to draw the line between how to present the customer service model to the customer by the operator and how the service is delivered by the operator. So really want to clear such a confusion. Next. To make sure everybody on the same page, actually we introduced several terminology for customer service model. There's a relevant draft. We actually have an architecture draft proposed in the OPS-WG. So here we list the several terminologies, for example, customer and a network operator. So the service model were used by the customer to communicate with the network operator about the network connectivity or internet service requirements. And for the service, we are referred to actually connected service and internet service that are established between the customer side and the internet, between the customer sides across network providers, network and the internet. And we also have data model, actually is give the abstraction of the managed object, but unlike the information model, actually it more focused on protocol specific part. We follow the data model driven approach. For service model, it's some kind of special data model. But just give the terminology here. Next. So next. So what is the customer service model? Actually, as I mentioned, we have a draft actually in OPS-WG working group. This architecture draft is based on three documents. First one is L2SM service model draft, which has already been delivered in L2SM working group. right now actually is ready for publication in FCQ. The second is a YARN model classification draft. We before the meeting we have raised some many discussion, resolve some dependency issue, and for this YARN model classification draft right now also is ready to publication. The third one is the L2SM service model draft. This is the starting point for this L2SM working group, and so for customer service model is used by the consumer. They can actually use like a graphic user interface, web form, command line, or this customer service model can be used by software. The software could be the service orchestrator, and they will use to request the service or configure service. But note that the customer service model is not code implemented in directly in the network elements, and so this model will use by the consumer and the software. And Mahesh, do you want to?
Yeah, Mahesh, Cisco Systems. So I think the fact that we have had so many people up here trying to really understand that boundary tells us that there is quite a bit of confusion, and thanks for trying to put this in words. But I think one of the, and I'll try to also go into in my presentation, I think one of the confusion is around the boundary when we talk about network operators and service providers. I think there is one layer in between that you're missing between a customer and a service provider. Now, so you say that a customer will use a service delivered by a network operator. MEF tends to take a slightly different look at it. It says that the customer actually orders a service from a service provider. Now, an operator can be a service provider, but it can be a separate entity also. I think one way to kind of disambiguate this confusion between what is a network operator and what is a service provider is to say, between a customer basically orders a service from a service provider. So I think that will help, in my mind will help, but that's just a comment.
Yeah, I think good you explained this one. That reflects back the early question we talked about the whether this service model is really what the network be able to do, then offer the customer to choose. Oh, this is true. The customer service model, as you're saying, this the model is for customer to use to order the service, not the customer to order what the network capable to do. Because the service or operator always be abstract these things to offer to the customer. Not just saying that, that's how I see the difference. Because I think it's coming from the bottom up, saying that, oh yeah, I have a device model, then device model up the model into the network service, whatever, then boom, this is what I offered to the customer, and customer choose. If we are talking about this customer service model, really we want to say that, customers just want to specify their service, not without knowing what the network be able to offer. The operator should be making this abstract to the.
I think customer service actually cover both aspects. Actually, operator can offer this service model to the customer. Customer can also use this service model to talk with operator. So it's not a single direction model. Actually, it's.
It's just matter of the data.
Okay. Just to reply, I'm a customer. I buy my own devices. My devices might not, I know what my device support. The service provider has what they support, and I have to find an overlap between what they support and what I have in my network. I don't want the service provider to force on me what should I buy. And not all, and there will not be one-for-one matching. So this is the reason why we have essentially, we have the discovery of the services on the devices that are available. And then you find the overlap, and then you are choosing what you want to run based on your business requirements. Rezorokui from Nokia. I second that. Whatever you said is correct. So from the customer perspective, they go and offer, they ask a service. I want the VLL with 10 meg bandwidth from point A to B. This is the model that we are discussing today. That will be translated further with the operator to say, to realize this VLL from point A to B, I need to create LSP, I have to create DQoS, I have to create ACL. So these all are basically the vendor agnostic layer or normalized layer or whatever we call it. So this is not the intention. Here is, I need a service, give me a service from point A to B or from A, B, C with this restriction required this objective. That's it. This is very abstract. This is the reason it's better to call it abstract. It's really abstract. We don't know how it will be realized, and customers should not care about that one.
So you're going one level above the technical model. Technical, okay.
Yeah. But
Hey, if you're going to have a conversation, have it at the microphone or don't have it.
Yeah, Iftikhar, I think I think echoing, Himanshu mentioned, and also I think, so again, this may be our understanding. So the service model to me looks like should be, because I think as Adrian opened up right the session, he talked about this is between the high level, abstract level, right? So why we are talking about the signaling protocol then? We should be talking about the services. Okay, I need a point-to-point service. I need multi-point. Okay, this kind of services. That's it. If that is the abstract model,
So
looks like we are exposing a lot of underlying technology.
So I'm going to come back to what I said before. There is a data plane interface between the customer's equipment and the service provider's equipment or the network operator's equipment. That data plane interface needs to be specified as part of the service order. It's not enough to say, I want connectivity between these sites. You actually have to tell the person providing that connectivity what you're going to be putting into that connection. It's like the adaptation that you need.
So there is a disconnect because they are talking what I call a business service model. And for that business service model, how you describe it, you also have to specify all the SLAs. How many people in this room, except those three guys that raised their hand that are operators, know how to model an SLA? Who did a SLA modeling in his career? And then we can discuss that, high-level abstract model if you know how to do the SLA modeling. Because what you will do there, it will be also come with all the business preconditions. We don't know how to do that. At least I don't know how to do that.
I think Iftikhar made my point, but just keep in mind that when we go through, again, we haven't come through the base draft yet. Be careful and verify that what is network device specific and what is service specific.
I think I agree what Agent said. Just you for the service, you have to agree what customer traffic you're carrying. Layer 2, whether you do ATM, whether you do the Ethernet, or Ethernet you do the VLAN or whatever. That has to agree, but you don't have to agree whether you do LTP based realize or you do the BGP based realize. I think that's difference. Of course, you have to agree what the service frame carried to the customer, but not the signaling.
Okay. So this actually focuses on the customer service model definition. We haven't go to the detail. Yeah. Actually, my topic actually focused on the customer service model definition. We haven't go much detail about this, our data model work. So maybe we can have further discussion in the later slides or in a later presentation. So next page. Actually, we have architecture we already actually defining the L2SM service model draft. And in this architecture, we can see customer service model is used between the customer service request and service orchestrator. And the customer service model will be served as a driving requirement to define the service delivery model. Service delivery model actually has already defined in the best working group. So so that actually the service, the parameter in the service model can be mapped into the configure parameter for the protocol configure model. Next. Oh, okay.
So you have your service orchestration talking to network orchestration.
Yeah.
So how do you, I will just put here for the billing question, because your applications are in the OSS, BSS, and the service orchestration talks first to the network orchestration without, having any billing authorizations.
So if we want to have a working group to do business models and billing models, I suggest you go and wrestle with Benoit outside. I think our intention is to avoid getting into stuff which I don't believe can be standardized, and certainly each operator does very, very differently. So the point of this picture and this working group is that little red arrow at the top, and the rest of the picture is context.
Mahesh, Cisco Systems. I would actually agree with Adrian. Let's not try to model the billing and other services that are offered at ServiceLayer. We are a technology group here, so let's focus on the technology aspect. But speaking of technology, I think what would, again, bringing the word L2 VPN from the customer service request to the service orchestrator is the reason why we have so much confusion here. I think you should just drop the word L2 VPN, because that then starts to get into technology specific, because that service can be of any form, right? It can be services in the form of EVPN service, or it can be L2 VPN. So I think trying to stay technology neutral will really help people not get into too much debate of what is exactly the service model is.
Too late. No, the too late is we are chartered to do layer 2 VPN service models. If we want to change our charter, if we want to do something different, then we have to beg Benoit. But as chairs, Ching and I can only drive delivery of layer 2 VPN service model.
So what the red arrow, what you have there, you cannot have it without business SLAs, that model. You have to go one layer below that, because the customer service requester, every customer, when they're ordering any service, they're ordering it with SLAs. Once it's ordered, you have to translate into technical service requirements. And then let's discuss the technical service requirements. There's a difference between that red arrow and pushing it one layer down.
All right, Mahesh, Cisco Systems. So yes, if the charter of this working group is L2 VPN, then maybe just let us recognize that that is one of the technologies that we are going to include. But that, let's not say that's the only. Okay.
Benoit Claes. So I wouldn't like this working group to try to do something too big, first of all. I agree there is some customer database, there is billing, there is SLA. This is, by the way, something that MEF is working on. They're working on SLA definition. I believe there is in the draft like a pointer to SLA, which is like a container that could be pointing to something that someone else does perfectly well. So this is fine. As Adrian mentioned, this working group is about the service model that tries to be technology agnostic, but if there is some technology specific information that we need from the customer, then it should be in the model.
Okay, next. So for the customer service model, how to use that? Actually, we adopt a Young data modeling language to model the service requirements, and so we choose a network for Young and in the interface between the customer and the operator. And for the encoding format, we use JSON XML. Also, we support any human readable format or machine readable format. And So for this kind of service model, actually, will be used as input to the service orchestrator to translate into the configuration parameter that can be used in the network to control the network deliver the service. Next. So for our customer service model, we try to clarify the scope of this service model, what should be included, what should not be included. So first is for as a service, such as infrastructure as a service, software as a service, platform as a service that is used in the cloud computing world. This is something actually we feel actually is hard to abstract to come up with a common core parameter across different operator. So it's not in the scope of the customer service model. The second is network operation part. Actually, network operation part is covered too much detail of how the service is delivered. Here we give example like point-to-point connectivity use various different network tunnel technology. This is too much specific, so we think we will leave out of this customer service model. The next is the service delivery model. Actually, we are focused on the customer service model. These are two totally different models. The relationship is the customer service model will be used as the driving requirements to define the service delivery model. The next is service layer agreement, SLA part. Actually, this is something actually has already been done in the MEF, and we think has a high degree of overlap with the service definition in the customer service model, and we think it's very useful. And but we also feel it's too much detail, and such as we may actually cover service metric, service parameter, service objective to allow to concentrate the service figure out how service is allowed by how much or how frequent, and so that's something we will figure out how what should put into the customer service model, what should not put in the customer service model. We still have the open discussion on this aspect based on the offline discussion with the L2SM draft author about that, and because we have some some discussion with MEF peoples. Next.
Can I ask one clarification question?
Yeah.
Hi, Dhruv. This is Dhruv. Can you give an example of a service delivery model that we have done in IETF? Or
yeah, in best working group, we have 3 working group jobs: L2 VPN network service model, L3 VPN network service model, and EVPN network service model.
But are those service model or service delivery model?
It's service delivery model. So we try to clear such confusion. So that's why you clarify what is the customer service model here. Next.
Iftikhar, I thought those were really the device model, actually, not because definitely I'm one of the co-authors in one of them. I mean, I know that's a device model, actually.
Yeah, the reserve from Nokia. One thing that we have to make distinction is the service at the network layer and service at the node level. All this draft that he mentioned, there are service created on a node. I want to create a service on a node, so these are the things that I have to create. From the network layer or from the end-to-end, this is the whole thing that we try to say this is a service, end-to-end view of whatever we see. And when this one will be realized inside the node, so you can go and use the best for L3 or L2 or EVPN to basically create that service.
Yeah.
Dejan Bogdanovic, so to give an example, I am a customer and I say connect A, B, and C with a low latency 10 megabit links, in the mesh. That's a service that I want to get from my service provider. Now, this is what I call a business service model, because on that I will put in, what is the low latency, minimum, maximum. All of that will be defined inside that. The next step is I have to look what my network supports in order to deliver that. Okay, so I can have different devices that support different technologies, and between them, I have to find something that I connect them all together that is satisfy that. This is what I call the technical service model, and then I translate it into the low-level device-specific model.
Rezo from Nokia, exactly this is the case, but I think it's better to just sort of the name that we want to create. Whatever you call business service, here is called abstract model or the customer model. So we are talking about the same thing. We are confusing ourselves with introducing different names. Let's stick to one name, and whatever it is, we call it business. Sure, I don't really have any objection.
That's fine. Yeah. But then I'm again saying this is the wrong forum to that high abstract level model, because we don't have the service provider who can tell us what are the SLAs, how to model the SLAs. We had that discussion before in NetMod as well, and during the classification draft modeling as well.
Benoit Claire. So in all the working group, basically, we spend a lot of time on terminology, and once we agree, we move faster, and we have to do that. I agree. Now we have one draft here. It's not a deliverable of this charter, but this is good content. It's being worked on in OPSWG. Maybe we want to remind to the mailing list a pointer to that draft and to the mailing list, which should be discussed. Ideally, maybe it should have been done in this working group, but we've been having L2SM already. So this is a key aspect, I agree. But we've got a draft for that already.
And actually,
because,
frankly, I'm not surprised if we lose operators from the room, because at the moment we are kicking stuff around and telling the operators how they build and use Yang models. And for goodness sake, it's not our business to tell the operators how they use Yang models. It's our business to listen to them tell us how they use Yang models.
So I just want to clarify. I think what I hear you're saying that we need to work on the IETF. We need to work on this technical service model. That's what you're saying, right? Okay. Then this is. Yeah, I think I get your point. I just want to clarify what this the difference between this we call here the customer service model versus the technical service. I see the difference. I want to clear that what this working group work. We are working on the service, the customer service model, or we are working on this technical service model.
I just want to get the clarification, and once when that's clarified, then I will also make a decision about my participation and what is of interest to me. That's the reason why I'm trying to clarify that. That's all.
How do we get clarified?
Well, the way you get clarification actually is by sitting down and listening to the chair present the clarification slides that he's been trying to talk about for the last 20 minutes. Ching, please.
Okay, let me finish the slides. And for the operator specific feature, actually, customer service is more focused on the core set of the parameters that are common to various different operators. So operator specific feature can be defined in the extension or augmentation of the customer service model. So another one is we can support the multiple service, and actually like L3, L2, and but how this service can be consumed by the service actuator. It could be consumed by the single service actuator. It could be consumed by each model can be consumed by each service actuator. It's implementation specific. That's what we want to clarify. That's all.
So listen, we are in a 90-minute slot, and we're pretty much an hour through it. And I think we've had important conversations, but I'd like us to focus for the next period of time, so that we actually do end up talking about the draft as well. So Mahesh, if you'd like to do your MEF piece.
I'm not sure if I want to be in these shoes right now with all the discussion.
You volunteered. And Scott is left. Oh no, Scott's fallen asleep.
Yeah, Scott conveniently stepped out at this point. All right. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what the work MEF is doing, and hopefully I'll avoid all the firestorms that are going on around here, just to tell you what MEF is doing, and hopefully at least is level set some expectations in terms of what work has already been done, what we think we can try to agree on, and see if there's clear area of work that can be split between the two. So as I said, I'm the editor for the Yang project for MEF services. And so I'll try to focus on that to give you some idea of how MEF looks at this. All right, next slide, please. So the most relevant work that's going on in MEF, of course, is the LSO reference architecture that Scott is the editor for. And he just decided to step out. So he's not here to answer most of the questions that I was relying on him. In addition to the LSO reference architecture, MEF is actually defining an information model, the Carrier Ethernet Service Information Model. It's in the final letter ballot, and it's expected to be published in January of 2017 as MEF 7.3. There is a draft version available for members in case you want to try to log in and access them. In addition to that, and where I come in, is I take that information model that MEF 7.3 has published. I identify the parameters that we believe are required for realizing a customer service model. And that's what we are modeling in the Yang project. So important, all this confusion, all this discussion, MEF clearly distinguishes what they expect a customer to define, and that's what we are trying to model in the Yang work in MEF. Next slide. So here's the information. It's also available on the liaison page, I believe, for anyone who wants to see what is the work and where the Yang models that are in a draft format right now. And I know Adrian and I talked a little bit about trying for the two groups to meet. Just to let you know, MEF has a meets quarterly, and their next meeting is in January in LA. Right. Yes. Sorry. Oh, sorry. 2017. Okay. But we are meeting in LA on those dates. All right. So here is the diagrammatic representation of what Scott is working on. What I have done is taken his diagram and kind of circled some of the areas that MEF is focusing on. Specifically, the area that I'm looking at is the legato interface between business applications and the service orchestration functionality layer, right? So what does that cover? Let's talk a little bit about it in the next slide. So the LSO puts very specific requirements for that legato interface. It says, take a customer order, very specifically a customer order, and then break it down into service provisioning activities. Right. So what are these? Then it also says that these activities have to be assigned and managed and tracked, make sure that the customer ultimately gets a service at the end of the day. And of course, it's complete. So the orchestration, in addition to just the service itself, there are other activities. There is a whole activity of billing, which of course the Yang model doesn't talk about, but there is that activity that I think Dan talked about that is we have to recognize. There is a whole aspect of delivery of CPE devices, if need be, to the customer that is also considered part of the service. Now, this is not going to be modeled as part of Yang, but just to recognize that there are other pieces of what a service delivery is all about. Next slide. So with all the discussion that we have had, one thing that, of course, we have to agree is that there are some definitions already out there and terminologies that MEF has taken a lot of time to come up with. It would be helpful to try to at least agree on them. I think in communicating between the two groups, it would be helpful, for example, to understand what is the definition of a service provider. So I have cut and pasted what I thought was from one of the drafts, the definition of a service provider. And you can see that MEF tends to look at it slightly differently. And it would be helpful to try to agree on what those definitions are. Same thing for whether it's a subscriber definition for what is a subscriber, which is nothing but a customer, a provider, what's an EVC, what's a uni, and specifically what is uni-C, uni-N, where are the boundaries between what is a customer equipment and a service provider equipment. Next slide. Sure.
Not one before terminology. So can you please explain more the decomposing of the customer order? Where is that happening? Because that is, really defining what we can do on the L2SM.
Right. So if you go back to actually one more slide. So the customer order is coming from the business application layer to the service orchestrator. So it's the role of the service orchestrator to decompose that customer order into service provisioning activities.
So in this case, it will be between the service orchestration functionality and infrastructure control and management that the L2SM models would be applied, correct?
That would be where I would envision it to be applied, yes.
In that case, the slides that were presented by when should reflect that.
So I repeat what Benoit said, because the comparison of this customer service concept and the LSO architecture is sitting in the ops area working group, not adopted draft. And it would be really good to have the discussion in the context of that, and then we can apply it out and generalize.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So I think in all the discussion, we have to also understand, are we just talking about subscriber services, or also we are also talking about operator services? Because I think in all the discussion that we have had here, we've kind of mixed the two, but mostly it's been about customer orders. So what is customer order? The first important point is, I think I don't need to repeat it, but a lot of people said this, right? Customer orders services. They don't order products. I think it's important to distinguish what is an order and what is a product. An order includes services. It includes pricing. It includes invoicing. It includes SLA agreements, and what are the penalties associated for a service provider that cannot meet that SLA. That's what a customer orders. It does not very specifically, I say, include technology or protocols. Right? I think we seem to have come to that agreement, but I just want to reemphasize the fact that that's at least what MEF believes is the case, that it does not include technology and protocols. All right. So MEF has defined a whole list of services. It's defined EVC, Ethernet, operator services, and OVC services. And I would encourage this group to try to take a look at those documents, because every document has not only the terminology, but also what is included in each one of these. And it would really be helpful for this group to try to take that. Next slide. So, and I think people here talked about, what are the kind of services? And I think Iftikhar talked about, well, we haven't mentioned E3. So this is an example of some of the services the customer might order. It's an E-line, ELAN, or an E3 service. And I know that we didn't mention that, but I think take this diagram, and I would encourage this to be included as part of what services we EVC services we can talk about. Next slide. So now those are separate from OVC services because there's a whole set of OVC services that are also that can be modeled, which is not part of my project, so I'm not an expert in it, but I've cut and pasted some of the diagrams for OVC services here for anyone who wants to go and delve into it. And these are defined in MEF 51. All right, next slide. So in closing, I think it would be really, really important. I know there were several words thrown out here to agree on the terminology that we are going to use between MEF and IETF on what does it mean for every definition that we are talking about here. The other thing I would probably try to stress is that it's important to not just mention MEF, that MEF is working on it, but to actually go and reference the document in question. Because I think if there's any doubt, just looking at the document would help clarify some of these definitions. And finally, I would highly encourage this group to try to augment the work that's already been done in MEF rather than duplicate it. All right, thanks.
So thanks. And the only comment I've got is we're going to put a hyphen between cross and reference.
Okay.
So our references will not be angry. Okay, great, thanks. Let's bash on with Giuseppe so that we can actually hear about this draft. What I'd encourage us to do is to let him talk for the remaining time in the meeting. Hold all your questions, take your questions to the mailing list unless he finishes early, because I think the important thing is to get the full picture of what he wants to say, and then we can work out what we're doing with it. So was that Benoit saying only operators are allowed to go to the microphone, ever, in the whole of the IETF?
Good morning, I'm Giuseppe Fioccola, one of the few operators in this room.
Wait for me.
I'm one of the authors of the L2SM service model.
Shall I?
Okay. Oh, yeah.
John. Hello.
Suspense.
That's the projectors now, just not seeing me. Well, that works well. If you find the slides, you can have it down.
Yeah, I just.
Clearly, I have an old laptop. He almost had it. Yeah, he's just hunting the slides down. I've got the slides, but it doesn't recognize mine. Come in.
Start with the introduction and talk.
Yeah. Okay, I think you know about background and motivation for this work, because service provider now manage every request from a subscriber or a customer with a multiple OSS that sometimes will belong also to different departments. And so this takes time to, for example, for a first installation of a new service for a customer. So this gives the motivation for this work, not only for this reason, but also because with this traditional way to deliver the service for the service provider takes a lot of time, but also a lot of cost spending and manual power, because most of the operation are manually. Okay, let's go to the first slide. Yeah, I'm explaining this slide. So This is the traditional workflow service delivery. And so we want to modernize this service delivery that gives a lot of cost, capital spending and manpower consumption. Next. So for a service provider network, we are entering in a new SDN era. So the need to have a new automation of this service delivery is very important in terms of improved scalability, reliability, and replacing the high-touch manual provisioning. Next. Okay, this is the reference architecture that also Shane described to you before. And we want to add a new SDN component that is the service orchestrator. And the L2VPN service model is the abstract interface between the service orchestrator, so the service provider and the customer. And this is important for two reasons, in my view, because a network operator would want to decouple the network layer from the service layer. And also the customer don't want to have information about the network layer, but just for the service attributes. Next. Okay, this slide expresses this concept. So the L2SM model is intended to be used by subscribers to communicate with the provider on sentence service attributes. And the L2SM can also be used as input for the network orchestrator in order to give the instruction to configure the network element. And also the data go back to the existing OSS and application. Next. Okay, this slide shows you the need for the service orchestrator, this new SDN component, because a lot of effort was spent on definition of young data model for network orchestrator and how to configure the network components. The service orchestrator is this new SDN component that enable us to have this abstracted interface. Next. Okay, now we have described the background and motivation for this work. We can go in detail with L2VPN services. So we divide into two categories, but we are open to other use cases to be added. The E-line services and E-LAN services. The E-line are point-to-point layer 2 connection that are divided in other two type of service depending on the application of service multiplexing on the UNI. And the same for the multi-point to multi-point layer 2 connection that are also divided into depending on the service multiplexing on the UNI. Next. Okay, this is the one use case of the use case number one, in which we have a single provider EVC. In this case, the EVC and the OVC are the same because we are in a single provider EVC. So there is a multi-point to multi-point or point-to-point Ethernet virtual circuit between the two UNI interfaces. Next. The use case number two is the case of multi-provider EVC. So we have an off-net UNI, and the EVC is not equal to the OVC. And we have to define also the ENNI link between the two providers. And the last use case, in the next slide, is the case in which we have a point-to-point virtual circuit between a customer UNI and the ENNI interconnect. So this is the OVC-based service. Next. Okay, now we can describe the structure of this service model. We divided into three main containers. That is the customer info, VPN services, and sites. Next. The customer info container has information about subscribers, so subscriber name, number, customer operation center, and so on. So information about the customer. Next. The VPN services container is intended for service-wide attributes and definition. So each services is identified by an SVC ID, which is unique for the entire network of the service provider. So SVC ID obviously can be identified with the EVC ID or the OVC ID depending on the use cases that I mentioned before. And obviously we can have multiple VPN SVC subcontainer because we intended this model as to have as unique for each customer that can have multiple services. The following signaling options are supported, so MP, BGP, VPLS, VPWS, EVPN, and TLDP, PV. Also other optional parameters, but you can view in details the Young model. Next. Yeah, the site container is intended for all the external interface associated with an Ethernet services, and we include UNI and ENNI types interfaces. The site container could inherit service attributes for VPN services, but have also its own specified attributes. In particular, is intended for the provider to store the information of the connection with the customer and UNI and ENNI interface in case of multi-provider connection, for example. And this container has the information like physical link attributes, service frame, layer 2 protocol frame, service OAM, of course, service bandwidth, priority level, and so on. Next. Okay. Now, after this fast view, also because of time of this Young model, we can, there is a lot of discussion within the design team and also in this working group about the use case we have to include and how to continue to work on this Young model. In particular, we can mention some aspects, some topics that are under discussion. The first was the alignment with the L2SM. Initially, the two work can move forward separately, but at a certain point, we understand that there are some similar aspects, like the definition of customer info or site container. So we are analyzing this aspect. And another topic is about the SLA target that is an important topic regarding the agreement between the customer and the service provider. So we are considering to add, for example, the MEF SLA target based on MEF work. But we have to understand how to put this within our Young model. Next. Yeah, of course, we solicit working group input because we need example to explain how this parameter can be used and some use cases. Next. This is another discussion regarding technical aspect for MAC loop prevention. So the protection type mechanism we should include, the number of retries refer to the restoration after some action and so on. So some technical details under discussion. Next. Yeah, thanks to the Adi Benoit to make a sanitary check to draft and Young compilation. Okay. Next. Yeah, also reference to the MF work has been inserted and will be updated after also the presentation that they had before, and will be fixed in the next update. No. Yeah, the next step, we have to, of course, prepare a liaison in response to MIF liaison. We have to address open issues that we have in charge, but also other open issues that will come from this meeting. And we solicit, of course, a review from community and comments and suggestions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That gives us 6 minutes in which to be polite to Giuseppe. No, perfect.
In order
Perfect.
to have more comments.
Yeah.
Mahesh, Cisco Systems. This question has come up a couple of times and it came up in your slides also. So I just want to mention on the question of SLA definition, MEF has defined SLAs. And actually, as part of the Yang model work that I'm working on, we have clear SLA definitions that the customer can request as part of the service. So if you just want to take a look at it and see if that meets your requirement, then you don't have to repeat that work.
Okay, thank you.
Reza from Nokia. Can you go to use case number 2, if you don't mind? Just I have a couple of fundamental questions that, for example, in this case, we discussed it a few times. From customer perspective, when they want to order this service, what do they order?
For a single service provider,
Yeah,
in the view of a single
let's
service
say
provider?
from the customer perspective,
Yeah.
when they order this service, they see whatever is inside the provider should be a black box, more or less a black box, right?
Yeah,
They say, I want to go connectivity from this CE to that CE with bunch of business objectives, including SLA. When they order this one, for example, they don't know whether or not there is ENNI there or not, or which ENNI is there, or all the details that you put here. I just want to fundamentally understand that whatever I see here, this is not the abstract model. This is the so-called vendor agnostic or normalized model.
But it depends, because I think the multi-provider EVC could be also provided by an agreement by service provider. So the customer could be unaware. I think it depends by the business model we are talking about.
Okay, but you're saying that in some cases, customers should know about that ENNI, and when they put the order, they specify that ENNI. Is this
in
correct?
some cases, yeah, could happen, yeah.
But I don't think, so this is a fundamental question that we have. So another one is about that service ID that you put for the in the Yang model. Why there is a service ID there? We order only one service. Why is a multiplicity of the list there?
No, because if one customer could have more services for this.
Okay, so but don't you think that the Yang model should have only one service, but there is the different instances of that service or that model, instead of putting the service ID inside the Yang model? For example, you are saying that customer orders a VLL and VPLS at the same time. So there are two services.
Yeah.
So there are two individual services. I prefer to have the Yang model for VLL, one for VPLS, although the customer is the same, but there is no correlation between those two services. When I saw the Yang model, I thought that these two services or multiple services are related, which is not the case. And last point is, we mentioned, Manish mentioned about, Mahesh mentioned about using MEF as much as we can. I agree with that one. For example, UNI definition and everything that is in this model should be really whatever is defined already in MEF, we reference it. Don't try to bring it and, change it and massage it.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Perfect. So Himanshu will be the last person to speak, and you've each got a total of 90 seconds, including the answer.
Okay, all right. Mahesh, Cisco Systems. And I think I'll go back to that point that you were just bringing up. I think it would be, if you break this down between what is a service provider and an operator, a service provider can traverse operator boundaries and offer a service, end-to-end service that you were talking about, where he doesn't have to specify either an ENNI endpoint or multiple service IDs. It's the service provider's job to delve that service out to multiple operators and say, you will provide this part of the service from this point to this ENNI endpoint, and the other operator is going to pick that up from that point and deliver to the end station. I think that's part of the reason why there's, unless you make that distinction between what is an operator
Yes.
and a service provider, you will have this confusion, who is providing the service. Make that distinction and you'll probably solve half the problems.
Yeah, right.
Okay, this will be a very short. I already mentioned this couple of times, but when people go through this draft and make sure that what is device specific, what is service specific, and I see a lot of device specific configurations in this. Okay, so yeah, of course this is first draft and that's okay. You know, but we'll
Yeah,
we'll
this is a 0.0 version draft,
Yeah.
so we have to work on it.
Yeah, no problem. But we should look into that.
Great. So thanks for volunteering to write an email to the mailing list, pointing out those flags. Right. One last thing before you run away. The working group has to have a document to work on. Is the document that Giuseppe has just presented a document we feel that we can pick up and make working group work and drive to be how we actually want it? If you think we should adopt this document and work on it, please hum now. If you think it's not ready or would be a bad idea, please hum now. Thank you so much. We can take that to the mailing list, and please bring your discussions and your concerns and all the issues to the mailing list. Thanks very much.
Thank you. So we have another.
There's another big sheet somewhere in the room. I'm shell shocked. So.
Yeah, sure.
Ah, okay.